Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Philosophical Coffee. This is the morning show for neurodivergent scientific nerds with self honesty and smart grit. That's right. So, I had some dreams last night, and dreams are different for me. People refer to my dream, well, I have the dreams that people refer to as lucid dreaming. And I have a very different experience with dreams because of it, because of my work. So when I have dreams, and I'm lucid dreaming, and I'm toggling between the dream and the conscious awareness. And I'm going, and it's always around 3 a.m. And this is where I get a lot of my concepts where I toggle between lucid dreaming and conscious awareness. And I'll have the dream, and then I'll come into conscious awareness, and I will evaluate the dream. And then I will go back into the dream. I will have scenario B play out, and then I will come back to conscious awareness and be like, okay, so evaluate A to B. What would happen if we did C? And then I would go back into the dream, have the dream, and then come back out, and I would have conscious awareness again. And usually almost always, by dream C, it's daytime and I'm awake. So then I get up and I go into my morning show and I have a new perspective because I was able to use dreams as reference points. And also when I dream, the emotions are very, very realistic for me. So, and I have all the scientific knowledge now to explain what lucid dreaming is and all that jazz, or give you a perspective on what's going on. So we have people who explore space, the final frontier, the expanse. It's not the final frontier. There's one more frontier that people missed. And then we have people who explore the body, or they explore the planet, or they get into quantum mechanics, quantum physics. That's the micro world. And then we have people who get into, well, that's about it. And there is so much more. I'm a lifelong learner, and my mental illness prevented me from getting jobs. I couldn't be around people. So I stayed home, I became a shut-in, and I learned. And I wanted to fix my mind. I wanted to be normal. Normal for a mentally ill person means without the obvious scars of mental health, of poor mental health and trauma. When a mentally ill person uses the word normal in the sense of I want to be normal, do not correct them. It is the worst psychological approach to it. Don't ever argue with someone, oh, you don't want to be normal. Don't gaslight them. Normal always means not mentally ill. That is what that means to them. And that is what they're trying to communicate. There is this severe anger and hatred, that intolerance, I'm going to use the word intolerance, that we all have for wrong words being used by people. We all expect everyone to adhere to the same dictionary, and that's not going to work. It's one of our biggest obstacles is the defined word. And once you realize this and allow for a 30-minute translation period, it's going to change your world. This is something I started doing with everybody about 3 months ago. I had a conversation with somebody. We had that 30-minute lost in translation. And after 30 minutes, and I'm going to reference Clockwork Orange here, within 30 minutes, we had figured out our translation error. We had learned each other's language, And we were able to enter into a depth of conversation, connection, and bonding that just opened up and flourished. It was beautiful. Clockwork Orange speaks with a different language. It's English, but it uses a different language in the book. And it takes about one chapter to learn the language. It's an extraordinary linguistic study. And I remember when I first started reading Clockwork Orange, I stumbled a lot. I struggled. There was a lot of back and forth. But after about a chapter, I forgot that I was even learning or speaking a different language in this book. And we see this kind of in The Maze Runner, but not to the extent as Clockwork Orange. Clockwork Orange was like the master of this skill. And I was also, I think, the first time it was done. So then watching Percy Jackson and watching the slang of the language with the children in the camp, that was one thing. But then reading Maze Runner, seeing them do it, it was very jarring. Respect to the author, but it was very jarring. I'm sorry, Clockwork Orange was gorgeous, how it just smoothed with this introduction of a new language. It was flawless in Clockwork Orange. And I was really amazed at how quickly the brain switches over. There's also another book named Frindle. And Frindle is exactly this topic of the power of words. What happens when you change a word to Frindle? And that's what happened in this high school in the book Frindle, is they changed the word pencil to Frindle. And then they watched it spread, so that within a month, everyone in the school was using the word Frindle instead of pencil. Words are evolutionary, and our intolerance for them changing has got to stop because it's holding us back. Watch this. You can either spend an hour hating somebody and arguing with them that they're not using the right word, or you can learn a new perspective by learning a new language within 30 minutes. Now, once you know that this is present, it doesn't take 30 minutes. The 30 minutes took so long because we were arguing. When you stop arguing and you start learning, I'm going to say that again. When you stop arguing and you start learning, you develop a massive tolerance for a different language. And every perspective has their own language. In addition to that, where I go in the internal expanse, language is mandatory. I have to create new language for this whole world. And then to communicate to all the different perspectives, I had to learn the sensitivity of language. I had to learn precisely how every perspective uses language differently. And I also learned that we have 4 different points of views. We have first person point of view, second person, third person, and omniscient. So I see some people who are speaking in first person point of view, and they're all in one of these 12 perspectives. And I'm going, oh, I'll talk to somebody, and because I'm in the internal expanse, I'm talking in the omniscient point of view. I will shift around and move perspectives. Now I'm studying the second person point of view with the U of I. And I wrote books. So I had to learn how to see and think in third person point of view while I was writing out my books. So my books gave me the mastery of third person point of view. My work into the internal expanse gave me the point of view of the omniscient point of view. And my journey through the full 12 perspectives gave me the first perspective point of view. And now, being in the U of I, 2 dimensions in, I am now speaking and learning how to speak in the second point of view. 48 languages, all English. 48 languages, all in English. I am now translating them over to math and logic, which are identical. It was so funny. I was studying math the other day, and I was looking at imaginary numbers, and I couldn't stop giggling, just imaginary numbers. Because in my work, because of the work I do, I was writing a letter to my partner this morning, and I had this moment of breaking down my different dreams to him, how I had the ability to step into perspective scenario A, B, and C, evaluate, and then come back to this perspective and go, oh. Now here's the thing. When you learn how to delve into the internal expanse, this reality becomes equal to the others. And that's really bottom line, is this reality becomes equal to, and suddenly fiction doesn't exist anymore. It's your story. So when you read a fiction story, you're actually playing in the internal expanse, but it's within the confines that society allows. So it's forgiving. We'll allow it. So it's forgiveness. And I guess you could also say it's tolerance as well. And in my letter, I explained to him that I healed because I wanted to be normal. I wanted to know a life without trauma. I wanted to know a life without the mark of blah. Normal is living a life without the mark of blah. There. That is the definition of normal. It is living a life without the mark of blah. So every mental person, every person who is mentally ill, who cries and says, I just want to be normal, what they are really saying is, I want to live a life without the mark of blah. Well, I hated my mark of blah so much that I removed it. But I had a unique vendetta. I knew that slavery and freedom was a huge part of my mark of blah. This is where I differ from everybody else. Everybody else thinks they're dealing with rape or abuse trauma, such as being beaten. Other people think it's name calling or rejection or abandonment trauma. I knew I was dealing with freedom and slavery trauma. Everybody is dealing with freedom and slavery trauma, but no one knows it because we don't call it that. We change the words on purpose to hide it. So I realized that my mark of blah included slavery. And in order to function, I had to literally remove slavery from my body, from my mind. And when I did that, it did something else. There was a side effect. The side effect was, well, the glass ceiling came off. You have the material plane, and then you have imagination, which is the door to the abstract world. And there is the safe zone. The safe zone of imagination in the abstract world consists of fantasy, story, fiction story, mathematics, money, and time. And that is it. Those are the only pieces that are tolerated. Anything more than that is intolerated and labeled as crazy, unrealistic. The name calling goes on. But freedom exists well beyond that point. There is this glass ceiling that tells you you cannot go further. So when a psychologist or a therapist works on mental illness, they are only working within the confines of, we're going to call that the first 4 perspectives. They've learned to tolerate the 5th and the 6th perspective. These are layers of the abstract world. This is where you start to delve into the external. And then they stop. Well, I didn't stop. I went on. Because freedom was my goal. And freedom means no limitations. So beyond the sixth is metaphysics. Technically, all of this is metaphysics. I call this stage the metaphysical transformation, and that occurs between the sixth and the 10th levels, or the sixth and the 10th perspectives. But there's so much more. And then I went further. I am currently in 12 plus 2. I am in 12 plus 2. That is the dimension that I am in. I can transfer and travel anywhere within the material plane through the imagination 1 through 4 and all the way up to 12 plus 2 dimensions. And I can see everything that goes on beyond that. I can see the infinity of it. Now, this is where, in order to know where and when we are, we require the philosopher's compass and the coordinates. Now, the big part of all of this, and this is really a big chunk of it, is this was something that I really had to figure out and deal with, was the glass ceiling when it came off. And I started to understand what I was walking into. I couldn't explain what I was walking into. I refer to this as the internal expanse. It is literally walking through the different dimensions or perspectives within the abstract world of the human mind. But I can see how mental illness prevents us from going further. I can see how a lot of people hit metaphysics and they go insane. We call that schizophrenia. That's actually what schizophrenia is when you step into the metaphysical plane without realizing. It's literally the process of going through the metaphysical transformation without realizing that's what you're dealing with. And if you look at the symptoms of schizophrenia, one of the top things is delusion, not knowing what is real. This is why, this is exactly it, is because you're walking through the abstract world, all of the different layers, and it's deep. It goes on for all of infinity. There is a formula I wrote called 1 times 12 times infinity. And this is it. It's 1 as in yourself, you, the person in the material plane. And then there is 12 different dimensions, and they go on for all infinity. The only limitation is you. Literally, just you. The problem is there are obstacles in the way. The obstacles consist of tradition, definitions of what is real. That is a big one. Culture, religion, and religion. Religion really interferes with this growth. Underestimating the human potential, a lack of education. And once you understand how to learn, you literally can start to travel through the different dimensions. My job is literally an explorer of the internal expanse, and I map it. That's what I do for a living. I am a cartographer. Bottom line, I am a cartographer of the internal expanse. That is what I do for a living. And I have been doing this my whole life, since I was 4 years old when I started to see it, and I was playing in it. And then by the time I got to 12, I was doing stuff at 12. And then by the time I was 15, I went, all right, and I rolled up my sleeves and I grabbed Plato and Socrates and Pythagoras and went, there's some deep shit happening here. And then I had a lot of interference from mental illness, and I knew there was more. I had no idea that there was more like this. And then when I cleaned up all of my metaphysics, imagination was still around, which was very interesting to me because, and this is like literally the last 2 years, when I cleaned up my mental illness and imagination was stronger than ever. The more you heal, the more your imagination comes in. And I'm going, what the fuck is she doing here? I love you, but what are you doing here? And because my therapist had told me that imagination was mental illness. True story. She told me that imagination was dissociation. And I have a really big problem with the word dissociation because dissociation, according to clinical study and psychology and the DSM-5, dissociation means absolutely void, of emotion. It's equivalent to psychopathy. But a psychopathy is a physical condition that prevents emotions, whereas dissociation is a defense system that shuts down emotions and suppresses them. Now, when I was in the wonderful world of my multiple personalities, I was not dissociated. And this is 100% because of my multiples. My multiples allowed me to go into so many different areas of the abstract, and it allowed me to map it all out. So I was able to map out every nook and cranny of the first 6 perspectives of the subconscious mind from 4 different points of views. When I was doing that, that allowed me to really open up the mind. Now, the reason why I'm getting into all of this with you is because it's the big picture. When people say, I just want to heal, what you're really doing is you are unclogging the plumbing work in your mind. And it literally activates your growth. We stunt our growth because it is not safe to learn. It's not safe to grow. And when you heal yourself with mental illness, one of the very first things that happens, and this is really it, there's like mental healing part 2. There's mental healing part 1, which is getting rid of the mental illnesses. But mental healing part 2 is learning again and having imagination again. Now, there's going to be consequences to that, and that's what people don't know. That is what a lot of people run into. So you have your mental illness, and then you have part 2, learning and imagination, and suddenly you have schizophrenia. And that's really how it goes. Schizophrenia is metaphysical transformation. It's what happens when you live in the material plane and you finally cross over into the abstract plane. And you start to explore the internal, but it's the doorway. It's like the entrance way. And you experience significant alteration in metaphysical transformation. It's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And there's a whole lot of physics here. And that's what I do here in this space is I teach you the physics. I teach you a lot of stuff. But which is where I went, you know what? I really need to just focus my attention on scientific neurodivergent nerds because they are bottom line. They're the ones who are intelligent enough to struggle with metaphysical transformation. And yeah, there's a lot happening here. So when you hit the 6th to the 10th perspective, that's when you go through that metaphysical transformation. At the 10th perspective, you finally learn the skill you need to end the metaphysical transformation. Now, you can learn the skill prematurely, but you really internalize it at the 10th perspective. And I can teach it to you. It's really simple. It's literally just a full 100% allowance of all your emotions. That's all it is. That is what you do at the 10th perspective, is it is all emotions are allowed. And you observe your emotions in a curious state of, what's this one do? You do that a lot. Last night when I was going to sleep, I had a feeling. This is a feeling I grew up with that I've had my whole life. And it arrived and I did a whole, what the hell are you doing here? That was exactly my words last night. What the fuck are you doing here again? And I did the whole wait, observe, stop. We need to examine this emotion. This is an emotion. What is it? We are going to call this unidentified emotion X. And I'm going to tell you about my story with unidentified emotion X. It is the realization and the weight. It is the emotional weight of taking in the eternal expanse. I first felt this emotion when I was around 12 years old. I thought, I had no idea what it was. I couldn't even begin to tell you what I thought it was. It did not feel good. It did leave me with this significant phobia of space. I was terrified of existentialism. I was terrified of the infinity of space. And every time I watched any space documentary, I walked away feeling like shit. And this unidentified emotion X, this emotional weight of the internal expanse, it was the awareness of, you know, that feeling when you look out in space and you go, oh my God, I am so insignificant. Because you get that perspective of how small we are on a planet that is so small in the perspective of things. This is kind of inside of you. This is inside of you. This is the feeling of, oh, the internal mind of the abstract goes on for all infinity and I can feel it. And you can just feel the weight of how deep this goes. And I felt this first when I was 12, and the emotion stayed with me until I was at least 20 years old. And it was just this horrific weight of, oh yeah, you have a whole universe and galaxy crammed inside your imagination. And it's abstract. Good luck with that. And it was very overwhelming. Overwhelming was a good word for that. You don't get to play with this emotion until you are solid in knowing who you are, hence the philosopher's compass. And it came back last night. I'm going to document this on the 8th of January. I'm going to say 7th. I'm going to, because I was still asleep. So 7th of January, 2024, it came back. I haven't had that feeling in a long time. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing here? I thought it was reflective of, I thought it was rape trauma or something. I thought it was absolutely just from the abuse. I thought it was slave trauma. But no, here I was. And it was back. And I'm like, what are you doing? Literally, it was like, you again. It was a very like standoffish. But this time I didn't run away from it and go, ah, like I always did. This time it was like, all right, you're here for a reason. What do you want? Oh, let's make it grow big and step into it like you do with all the emotions. Oh, yay. So I made it big and I stepped into it and I went, I understand. It is the emotional weight of the internal expanse. That is when I found the words internal expanse. And I went, oh, that's what I did. It's the internal expanse in my brain. That's what this feeling is. Great. And I was doing a lot of work with existentialism when I was 12. So, you know, it's funny. I remember in Men in Black, when Will Smith shoots the girl, can you tell me why little Tiffany had to die? And he goes, that girl, she's got quantum physics and she's in this alleyway. That girl's way too young for quantum physics. And I'm going, want to bet? I had a real problem with that line. She's way too young for quantum physics. Who says? And that is a glass ceiling. This concept of ageism is what's holding us back. Ageism is a big problem with this. Ageism. I have a huge problem with ageism. So, did you just steal the Dorito chips?
No.
No stealing. You're fine. we had some Dorito chips. They're my guilty pleasure. I really need to get away from them. And we have one bag left, and then there's been Dorito wars in the house. It's like, who gets the chips? So it came back. This feeling came back, and I was able to finally go, oh, it is the emotional weight of the internal expanse. So mapping what this thing is, and this is really it. There's healing, and this is what after healing. A lot of people are like, what you can expect after healing, and people have this idea of, oh, I'm going to get my little white picket fence, and I'm finally going to have the American dream. No. If you've done your healing right, you're going to unlock your growth, and when you unlock your growth, you're going to start growing again, and growing is proceeding and developing into the depths of the abstract. You spend the first 12 years approximately in the material plane. Only 12 years in the material plane. I'm going to point out how fucking cool it is that mathematically we're back to the number 12. You're going to see that a lot. For some reason, and that is something I am really curious about, why 12 of all the numbers keeps popping up. 12 is becoming my favorite number. Sorry, 17 and 42. You got to take a back seat now. 12 is now present. Oh, yeah, I'm totally doing that to you guys. 17 and 42, taking a back seat because 12 is now here. That's right. 12 is now in the house. That's right. I have competition happening with my numbers, you know. So, yeah, 17 and 42 just took a back seat to 12. And I'm going to point out, no, I can't say that two 12s make 42 because that is absolutely not the case. Yeah. So, I love 12. The first 12 years of our life, we're in the material plane. Around 12, we enter the abstract world where we are supposed to, isn't that interesting? We're supposed to learn the I of I on the material plane. Interesting. Fascinating. Now, I am a firm believer that we actually enter the abstract plane a lot sooner. But the concept of abstract theory and abstract thought doesn't actually come in until you have reached a certain development in your growth, which is not measured by your age, but measured by which perspective you are in. These perspectives also measure your intelligence. So that the more you learn, the more intelligent you become, the deeper into the abstract you go. And I am a firm believer that once you reach a certain depth in, your material body ceases to exist. It doesn't have to, because law of physics, energy cannot be destroyed. And I believe that we are made up of pure energy. I believe that that is our soul. It took me a long time to figure out soul, to translate that from second perspective over. And I'm like, what is soul? It really bothered me. Soul is I want to say it's your core energy. And I believe that your core energy is you. This is what I believe. I believe, and this is where I want to be really careful because physics must be the law here. And then it gets into all the spirituality that fills in the holes where physics has not yet, how our knowledge of physics is not present yet. But I do believe that energy is the soul and that each individual is the primary energy. I want to say it's our primary energy. It's our core energy. And this is the energy that gets cycled over and over again. It is also the parent to other energy. And the other energy that is the parent is the emotions. What is it called? That's where emotional energy comes from. The parent energy gives birth to emotional energy. That is what I believe. There's a whole lot of other stuff here, but this is what I can see way off. Like that's some of the stuff I see in the dimensions. And I'm going, okay. I have been looking through the dimensions since I was 4. And I'm now at a point where when I'm looking at them, they're right here on my doorstep and I'm passing through them and I'm going, oh, cool. And they're passing through. My problem is trajectories when. I struggle with when. That I cannot figure out. And it's probably because I grew up in the abstract plane. That is what I think is the reason why my ability to predict when is so horrible, because I grew up I was in the abstract since I was 4. So I really, really struggle with placing the when, because you have to be grounded in the material plane for that to happen. So after the first 12 years, and by the way, during those years, we are all about imagination, which is the doorway of the abstract. So we are actually all over the place with the doorway. We can't stay out of the doorway. It's not until school and parents in reality, I hate that word reality. Reality really gets my goat, forces us into their expectation of what reality is defined as. But it's such a so this is my world. This is how I see everything. Is I'm living in space as this energy being that's just hopping all over the planets, and I'm through the Milky Way. I'm jumping in and out of black holes, and I'm all over all these different galaxies. And then I come back to Earth and somebody says, oh no, this is the only planet that there is, and you have to stand right here in this particular box. And I'm going, really? Really? That's how I see things. That is how I see things. And when we dream, and the dreams are so real that they evoke the emotional response, and we wake up shaking and crying from them, they're real. When you watch a movie and you are so moved by the story and you have the emotional response, it's real. When you dream up worlds in books and you step into those worlds and you cry because somebody died in a book, it's real. When you imagine a world of your own and you step into it because you need to escape the shithole that you live in, it's real. All of these things are simultaneously real. Welcome to dimension. That's it, bottom line, is this is dimension. A perspective is a dimension. It's just a location. And when you start to understand the 1 of 12 of infinity and how deep this abstract goes and how much more we are actually part of the abstract world than the material plane, how much of a peon existence the material is, it's laughable. The material plane is just the matrix. And when the matrix is sitting there forcing you into their little boxed offices going, oh no, this is how it is. And I'm going, you think that's how it is, do you? So says the fourth perspective in the first person point of view. Wow. So it's a cage. So when I went through my healing, because of my unique abuse, I was obsessed with getting rid of all the cages. I needed 0 cages, 0 limitations, 0 chains. We're talking freedom on such a level. And that's where I went. Freedom on such a level. And when I took off that glass ceiling, it launched me into the metaphysical transformation between the 7th, 6th, and the 10th perspective. And I had no idea what to expect within the metaphysical transformation. I had no idea. It was emotional turmoil. And then through the metaphysical transformation, there was this sudden calm from the 11th. Welcome to logic. And then the 12th. And then the 1st again, and the 2nd. The 1st to the 2nd power. And it was suddenly this I can see, I mapped it out. You have your 12th perspective of the eye of I, or the 5th perspective of the eye of I. But then you have your 2nd perspective of the you of I, which means you're going to have the 3rd perspective of the they of I, and eventually the 12th perspective of the all of I. And I went, well, what's going to happen after the 12th perspective of the all of I? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. I have no idea what the dimensions are beyond the eye of I. I have no idea, because that's omniscient. I have no idea what's on beyond the omniscient point of view. And suddenly I'm going, wow, I have a full map. And I did not know what was going to happen between the 12th and the 1st perspective. I didn't know if it was going to become the 13th. I didn't know if there was stopping. There is no stopping. You don't stop growing. This is the beautiful thing. You never stop growing. So when I hit the 12th perspective and I was back in the 1st perspective, I went, I know where I am. This is the you of I. I am in the you of I. I am in the 1st perspective of the you of I. I've been here before. This is very much the 1st perspective of the you of I. And it was just lounging very much in comfort and luxury, which is the 1st perspective, comfort. And the 2nd perspective is adventure, which is what I call the learning perspective. And you toggle through the 1st and 2nd perspective for the rest of your life. You toggle between them for the rest of your life, that 1st and 2nd perspective. So it's interesting to see how it keeps coming back on itself. I was talking to this person on Instagram. I wasn't talking to her. I gave my opinion and she lashed out. And she was explaining that she was explaining her symptoms, ADHD, and then she had a whole list of things. And I went, oh, well, there's your ADD, and that's trauma, two completely different things. And I really want to focus on that because that's really, really like the ADHD and the trauma. That is such a huge, huge thing. Is when you have a cocktail of mental illnesses, they merge and you don't know what part is what. When you are at each of these perspectives, every one of these perspectives runs at their own frequency. That is vital. Every one of these perspectives, you are energy and you run at your own frequency. And your frequency might be X. Good God, I would love to sit down and do this. A great example of this is, I saw this in Stranger Things, and this is a great example of this. If you put a bunch of children in a room and you have the children raise their hand and volunteer to say the word me over and over again, you're going to get some children going, me, 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 and other children going, me, 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 me. They're going to have different frequencies. That is their frequency. After about 5 seconds, they're going to listen to each other, and mirroring in optophysics is going to take over, and they're going to sync up. They're going to find a unanimous frequency to match. And then they're all going to say in rhythm, me, 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 which is a combination, an average of all of the frequencies. We do not all run at the same frequency. So when you have listened to how you talk, your speech speed is your frequency. It's a metric. Speech and linguistics are a metric. Mine, oh my God, mine are fast. I'm not even going to try. A New Yorker. So the frequency is your frequency. How fast you talk is determined by your frequency. So when you have a fast talker, it's actually you tuned into your frequency. And you're running at a certain pace, at a certain frequency. Other people are much slower talkers. They run at a different frequency. And what happens in our society is people who talk fast, people who run at a higher frequency, are often told to slow down for other people. We get this a lot when we get slow talkers and fast talkers. And the slow talkers will say, whoa, whoa, you're going too fast. And the fast talkers have to slow down for the slow talkers. But this, in some cases, becomes so abusive that eventually the fast talker slows so far down that it becomes abuse. It ends up suppressing them. And that is where ADHD develops. It's because they are running at a higher frequency and they're being forced to slow down at a different frequency that is not their own, which is why, exactly like in physics, when you have a ball and you've condensed the energy and it will just sit there and vibrate and shake, it's condensed. And this is what they do at CERN, is they condense energy down and it just shakes. The ball has ADHD. It's done only from trauma, because it's traumatic to live at a different frequency. And this is the best thing. This is the most rewarding thing from this, is your frequency determines how fast and how much you can learn. This is literally your learning speed. That is what your frequency is. It is your learning speed. It is how fast you can upload data into your mind. I have this one friend. She's amazing. She's wonderful. She is on par with my frequency. So when we have conversations, she and I only have to speak the first 2 words of every sentence, and we immediately know what the other is saying. This is the beginning of ESP. It's when you upload information so fast that so did you, okay, oh yeah, you got it. All right, you got this, we're good. And we have conversations like that all the time. Now, somebody of a slower frequency has heard us and they've gone, how can you understand each other? And it's because the 2 words is enough that we've uploaded the data. It's literally the beginning of ESP. And it's happening around the second perspective of the U of I. That's when we're seeing ESP starting. Telekinesis and telepathy are coming. They are in a higher frequency. And we can see it. It's very clear for us because we can see through the dimensions, because we've broken through the metaphysical transformation. And that's the barrier. It used to be that the 4th perspective was the barrier. And that was the societal expectation. But now the fifth and the sixth perspectives are breaking through. And now the sixth perspectives are suffering from the first stages of metaphysical transformation. And now that branches off into the diagnosis of schizophrenia, which is inability to tell what is real, inability of, or having delusions. It's not delusions. That's part of it. It's absolutely basically you need to get on your own frequency and fast. And as soon as you shift over to your own frequency and you stabilize, oh my God, it's so much better. And your frequency is determined by how fast you learn. These are literally the characteristics of your frequency. It is how fast you learn. It is how you learn. It is your freedom, your self-authority. Your freedom is a huge part of this. If you do not have the freedom and the ability and the safety to go as fast as you need to go, not going to work. It is how much, it's your multitasking. So you're going to be taking in so much data. I knit and I listen to music and I watch TV every night. I've got all three of those things happening. And I'm also, my mind is also running. And it's because I am uploading that much information that quickly. And so it's absolutely multitasking as part of it. So there's how much you're learning, there's the freedom, and then there is learning, the freedom. I think that's pretty much it. It's your freedom, it's your learning. Yeah, and that's it. It's being able to free, and it's literally uploading your information. And it's the consent. The consent is mandatory, because if you do not consent to what you're being taught, if you do not consent to when you're being taught, that is going to grossly interfere with your ability to upload data. This is 100% our relationship with learning and taking information in. And there's a lot of complaining about, oh, well, we have short attention spans. That's actually us. That's okay. That's good. That's actually part of our development. An attention span is not a metric of a problem. An attention span does not mean we're getting smarter or stupider. It actually means we're getting smarter. A small attention span means we're getting smarter because we're able to retain more information at a faster pace. It is an increase and intake of data and information. A small attention span is actually good. It's not good for slow talkers. It's not good for the foundationals who aren't there yet. And this is where there's a massive divide. There's people who are at the higher frequency who can obtain and upload this information very quickly. You're neurodivergent. And then there are people who are so uneducated that they're still in the material plane. And we're seeing this massive divide between the abstract and the material. A war is coming. And that's really it. The nonconformists are the abstract. They are the neurodivergent. And the conformists are the material plane who expects everyone to stay as low as the fourth perspective in the eye of I. And that does not work for the evolution that's coming, that is currently happening. That evolution into the metaphysical transformation at the sixth perspective, when we will delve deeper into the internal expanse of the abstract world. And by mapping these out, laying them out and explaining what happens with each one of these dimensions, and then being able to show how far they go, is huge for alleviating a lot of the worry. Oh my God, there is so much concern, because I have seen so many people at the sixth perspective terrified over, oh my God, what's happening? I had some of my case studies call me up crying, going, I don't understand what's going on. I can't tell what's real anymore. That's metaphysics. You're in the metaphysical transformation. This is what's going on. I've broken down the physics. I've broken down the neurology, the science, and what's going on in the brain and the electromagnetic field for them. And it's like, you're not going to understand, because you are in the process of transferring over from the material plane to the abstract, so that we are becoming more abstract than material. Bottom line, the days in the material name are numbered. Evolution says so. We are energy beings. We are story beings. We have imagination. There's a reason why imagination is going stronger than ever with neurodivergence. And it's literally take out the imagination, and now you've got a bunch of fourth perspectives who can't evolve. Imagination is literally the crux that's going to get us to the next stage of evolution. It is literally the divide. It's something I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them that artists are neurodivergents. Artists are the ones who are turning into the geniuses of the world. Art is the nonconformists. And it was suddenly like oh my God, it's because they've retained their curiosity and their imagination. Whereas schools in the United States are removing imagination and curiosity in the learning environment. Really, let's reflect on how stupid that is. That the learning environment is removing strategically and systematically imagination and curiosity in the learning environment. And as a result, we have a lot of people who are automatons. They're not unaware. They're automatic. They're robots. And they're drones. And they are drones because they lack imagination and curiosity. Without those two things, your brain awakened is an understatement. They're automatons and they're drones, which is why they can't think, they can't problem solve, they can't make decisions, they can't comprehend. It's why they're mindless when they're completely unaware, because they're drones. And they get angry when they see other people not conform, and that's about the end of their world. The future very much lies with the neurodivergent, the artist, the imagination, the creativity, and it's opening up the abstract. But none of the work has been done because fourth perspectives have run the world. And fourth perspectives have all these rules that say you got to stay in the material plane. Well, the material plane is falling apart. It's not going to hold a bunch of physics-based energy beings who live in the abstract. And that's what's going on. You've got a lot of people who are out there talking aliens. I have no tolerance for that. I really don't. I believe in aliens, but the concept of there's a lot of spiritual stuff that's going around right now, and I find that spirituality is most prominent when people lack physics and science. It's literally it's an amazing ratio. The less science they know, the more spirituality exists. The more science they know, the less, because the science fills in the blanks. And if they don't have the science, it's extraordinary to see the balance. The more I studied physics, the more I went into this, the more I went, well, that's no longer magic. Now that's just science. That makes sense now. And that's the words. That makes sense now. Those words are magical words. Haha, ironic. The words, it makes sense now, is just our comprehension. And that's really what we are up against here, is what we comprehend and what we don't comprehend. But if we're not learning and studying, well, our comprehension is going to be much lower. So there's a lot that the foundationals don't comprehend because they are not learning. So they have a lot of religion and spirituality to fill in the blanks. Meanwhile, as we delve deeper into the abstract world and we are expanding our comprehension through education, learning, and sciences, we're starting to understand all of this, going, oh, this makes so much more sense now. But there's a crux. The fourth perspectives deemed that psychology should not be involved in science. So there's no science at all. I said this to somebody yesterday, and I love the way I worded it. I see the physicist over here studying physics, and I see the economist over here studying economics. I see the philosopher studying philosophy, the psychologist studying psychology, and the linguist studying language. And I'm going, no one's talking to anybody. No one is conducting interdisciplinary studies. And not one of these peoples have discussed anything with anybody else. Everybody is in their own hole, in their own perspective, oblivious to the occurrences of the others. Every one of them has a massive piece to the puzzle, but there's like 10 pieces, and no one sees the big picture. And only because of my mental illness, only because I didn't work, only because I decided to become a lifelong learner, that I studied all of these, that I sat down and went, welcome to the internal expanse. And suddenly I'm seeing things and explaining to people that I'll talk to a psychologist and they'll say, oh, this. I'll talk to an educator and they'll say ABC. And I'm going, yeah, but you're not taking into account the economy of the problem. You're not taking into account the psychology of the problem. You're not taking into account the physics of the problem. You're not taking into account anything else. I'll talk to my neuroscience friend and he can only talk to me about neuroscience. And I'm going, yeah, but what about the psychology? What about economy? What are ecology? What about, and I'll go over all these other subjects with him. And because he lacks those perspectives, he can't see the well-rounded picture. Interdisciplinary studies is our future. And this is the best part. With neurodivergence, we're going to have the capacity to do it. That's really what the neurodivergent mind is. It is the mind that says, all right, I'm ready to study all the subjects. Jack of all trade, master of none is foundational extinct garbage for people who cannot expand past the fourth dimension. Well, guess what? Neurodivergence can. We are going to see super geniuses who unlock the abstract world with internal expanse, and they are going to be able to learn multiple subjects. Interdisciplinary study is going to be the thing of the future. It is going to be the thing that drives and fixes all of this. And this is the best part of interdisciplinary studies. There's going to be a point where this is so much the norm that when we look into our past and we study about our history and we go, wait a minute, people only studied one subject their entire life? Why? That's going to be laughable to us. It's going to be ridiculous because it's going to become so much of the norm of this interdisciplinary study, where by the time we are 12, and believe me, the mind can do this, by the time we are 12 years old, we will have a mastery in 10 of the 14 primary subjects. By the time we're 20, everyone is going to have all of the subjects, because instead of learning a little piece of every subject across the board for 12 years, we're going to flip it into hierarchical education. It's a thing. And we're going to spend 1 year just mastering all of the math, 1 year mastering all of the science. And we're going to start this at age 1 to 2 years old with arts, which is all we do for the first 8 years is study the arts. And then from like 7 and up, 6 and up, we go into the mathematics and the language. And then we get into the sciences. So it goes art, communication, and then science. That is the order. Art, science, art, communication, science. So that once we have all this down, by the time we're 20, we're going to be like, all right, I can see interdisciplinary studies now. And believe me, it's going to be so easy for us to fix global warming at that point. It's going to be so easy for us to fix the problems of the world. And once we know about this path, once we know this, it's going to go fast. Because the first thing we're going to have to do is change the way we learn for the neurodivergence. Basically, it's leave the neurodivergence alone, and it's called free education, free form education. Free form education is what I was raised on. It's what I put myself on when I was all my life. I've always been on free form education, which is why I was able to pull this off. I had somebody ask me the other day, I have the equivalent of 7 doctorate degrees. And she was like, how? Free form education. I started this before I was 12. And I was allowed to just do whatever when it came to my education. For some reason, this is interesting because it contradicts my parents' parenting. But for some reason, I was allowed. That's an anomaly, and I have to inspect my parents' psychology. I was allowed to learn. I was allowed to be left alone to teach myself. They allowed me that. And that is my saving grace. So that all I did my entire life was just learn. And now I'm looking at, okay, now let's go back to the way we teach our children, the way we are teaching ourselves. And it's that free form education of literally knowing how to groom, navigate your imagination and curiosity, and then using your curiosity to create what I call educational pathways or curious roads, curious paths. That way your curiosity and your logic has the ability to depict, this is an anomaly. This is interesting. This is something I want to study. And then it just branches off like a massive tree into whatever it is you want to study. And my daughter's already starting it. And she's around the same age that I was with ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, which is where I started. And from there, it just expanded. It like a massive tree. And everyone has a curiosity trunk that they start with. And then if you leave them alone, they will branch it out and they'll study everything. But what they study, and I see Wikipedia, YouTube, I see Google being such a huge part of this. And I taught my daughter how to do it. Now I was 19, I was born 1980. So I didn't get this. I didn't have those luxuries until like later. It was like 2006 when I discovered them. So I did everything with books and the World Book Encyclopedia prior. And then one of the books I got when I was doing my writing was how to Google and how to do research for books using hyperlinks. So I came up with a map where you take Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is Cliff Notes, but you want to go down to the bottom and there's a whole lot of reference books. In fact, let me see here where I have it. I can't see it right now. No, I don't know where it is. But if you go down to the bottom of Wikipedia, there's a whole list of book references. I would buy those books. And then I would buy and read those books. And then after I read the books, I would go through Wikipedia like a fresher. It was like, oh, I remember when I read that. So I actually had the sources that Wikipedia used to create Wikipedia. And then when Michael Jackson was a great example of this. So I had no idea who Michael Jackson was when he died. I had no idea. He died and I went, who the hell is Michael Jackson? So I went online and I went to Wikipedia and I read Michael Jackson. Now, this is how I did it. I would read the article on Michael Jackson and it would reference one of his music videos. I would then click on the hyperlink. It would take me over to YouTube and I would watch the music video. And then I would go back over to Wikipedia. Now, I also had a music theory degree. I also knew music theory. So I knew all the everything that he was doing musically. And I went back over to Wikipedia and it broke down the analysis of the song and how it was groundbreaking. It's okay. So Michael Jackson is just Gene Kelly and Bob Fosse mixed. So I'm not impressed with Michael Jackson at all. I'm impressed with Freddie Mercury. I am not impressed with Michael Jackson. He's just a hack to me. So I'm like, okay. So I read it. And then I would go through the next segment and it would break down the next musicality of what he did. And then I would go back over to YouTube and I would read that and break that down. I did it with Queen. I did it with every band. So and then I'm classically trained. Like I did it with all of the musicians. So I used YouTube in collaboration with Wikipedia as a guideline. And then and Wikipedia was basically the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy. It's exactly like that. So I did the same thing with philosophy. And I'm doing this now where it would get into metaphysics. And then I would, okay, well, it's referencing Aristotle's physics. So then I switched over to, I bought the book, and that's one of the books I'm reading now, is Aristotle's Physics. This is free-form education. And believe me, it is far more effective than anything they've got for us at school. Now, I'm also on Khan Academy. KhanAcademy.com is the homeschooling program I'm using with my daughter. And it's free. It's free. Now, my daughter's getting a degree, so we had to pay money for hers, but everybody else is free. This is just information. So I click in mathematics, Khan Academy, and there's the entire course. And I can choose whatever I want. So I'm going through. In addition to that, I click in physics, and I'm just going through. So I'm on Khan Academy now. And then I go over to Wikipedia, and then I hop over to YouTube, and I fill in the blank. And it's all spanning it out. And as I'm using Wikipedia to learn the history of, I'm also using Khan Academy to actually do the work. And that's also partnering up with my ability to flip over to the YouTube videos to get examples as I need them. So it's this, the only thing that I'm stuck on is chemistry because I have no chemistry lab and I don't want one and I don't want to play with acids. So I don't know how I'm going to handle chemistry when I'm there, but everything else is pretty much solid. It's all set. And once you know how to learn with free-form education, you're set. Now, I followed Plato's curriculum, and Plato's curriculum is literally the start with the arts and then go to communications, which is your math, your language, and geometry and trigonometry and calculus. Those are your languages. And then from there, go into the sciences. And then after the sciences, you go on to the maps. And the maps is astronomy, astrology, as in mapping of the stars. I have to clarify that. And yeah, that's it. It's you go on to the maps last. And that's where his curriculum ends. But it's absolutely hierarchical so that you master all of music. And some of the subjects you go back to twice, like physics, you visit twice, geometry, you visit twice. But everything else is in this very strategic order. And here's the best part. Because you are mastering the foundation of art, imagination, creativity, you're also in the second perspective. And that's fun. So you're teaching yourself that learning is fun and it's enjoyable because it's consensual. And you're allowing your path of, this is the best part, you're allowing your natural path of curiosity to unfold and embark on adventure. Now, the reason why that is so important to our human nature is because we are explorers by nature. Every one of us is an explorer. We are cats. Cats are in the second perspective. We are cats. We have to explore. And that does not go away. This is adventure. This is when you're on a date, or there are some people who they do go on multiple dates with multiple people because they love the adventure. There are some people who do travel the world because we're into adventure. There are other people who go on these massive journeys, massive field trips. It's because of our adventuring nature. This is such a huge part of who we are as a human being. It really sticks with me in the movie Truman Show, when he stands up and he says, I want to be an explorer like Magellan. And the teacher just drops down the map and says, oh, you're too late. I remember, like, my mental screamed in that moment, right along Truman's, going, no, we are explorers. And we have this mentality. We're told that, oh, you're too late. There's nothing left to explore. Bull fucking shit. There's not. It's called education. Once you take your explorer, adventurer instinct and you dump it and pour it right into this free-form education, oh, the rest is history. Ba-dum-bum. So what you want to do from there is mystery and curiosity. That's really what you want to tap into it. And these are the ethics you get in the second perspective. These are the drive, mystery, curiosity. My recommendation is find a question, find an anomaly, and seek out the answer. And this was what drove me through my map, was finding the curiosity, finding that answer, and then driving, propelling yourself forward. So with the explorer, the adventurer, the mystery, the curiosity, and then you add in that freedom of being able to literally just go wherever you want through the education, whether it be history, whether it be all of these different subjects, and correspond it with the History Channel, correspond it with the documentaries, correspond it with classical cinema, or cinema in general. And that was the other element that I was bringing in, was being able to supplement the great books with all of these different aspects. When I went through the geometry, I also got heavily into architecture. And when I got into architecture, that took me into all the different Paris opera houses, all the different opera houses, a lot of emphasis on the Paris Opera House, and the architecture of Paris, the architecture we see in Italy. And I really pulled in a lot from there. And then that trailed me over into the music, and that trailed me over into, and it was this massive expanse. So the more you do this, the more you grow your hippocampus, the more you expand your mind, the more you expand your mind, the more it spans out. What does this have to do with healing? Well, this is your identity. This is absolutely who you are. We grow. And that's something that people don't expect. There's healing, and then there's growing. And one of the massive symptoms of mental illness is no growth. We stop growing when we're mentally ill. And really, when you start to grow, part of what you're also doing is you are pushing through the lower perspectives. This is exactly what you're really doing. Excuse me. What you're really doing is you are growing your mind through the lower perspectives where the mental illness takes place. Mental illness is only present prior to the sixth perspective. You can only get mentally traumatized within the first three perspectives. Well, it's a lack, it's a compromising. It's compromising the first three ethics. That's where mental illness begins, or that's where mental illness occurs, is abuse and trauma during the first three. It's compromising the first three perspectives. And then in that fifth perspective, you gain accountability. And in the sixth perspective, you become a pacifist. And so that's huge. That is so huge that with accountability, you become a pacifist as of the sixth perspective. Abuse ends. It absolutely ends. You can still be subjected to it, but then the only way out is literally through that metaphysical transformation. And that's when people think, oh my God, I'm mentally ill, I have schizophrenia. You don't have schizophrenia. You are in the metaphysical transformation. And it's going to be a really difficult ride if you do not ground yourself, if you do not have the ability to, well, you have the ability, if you do not have the skills necessary. And this is really it, is there is this concept of ability versus skills. And people confuse the two. People really confuse the two. Skills are what you know, and ability is how good you are at it, or if you can or can't. And that's really it right there. Skills are what you do know. And people think, oh, I can't. They think about ability. They don't think about skills. And ability comes from the word able. Are you able or aren't you? And they don't take into account that your skills is going to dictate your ability. And you can grow your skills. You can teach your skills. You can expand on your skills. So once you start getting into this concept of growing, of healing by growing, of educating yourself through healing, I'm going to be very blunt about this. This was the only way I got through my mental healing, because mental healing requires problem solving. And problem solving is a luxury that is only granted to intellects. You cannot problem solve if you do not have the basic logic education. And either you do or you don't. And you have people, and this is logical education. Logical education is the difference with problem solving, because you have to override your fear with logic. That is what's going on under trauma. And this is the difference. This is the divide of what's going on inside of our minds. Because you have people, the foundationals and the nonconformists or the conformists, who are completely regulated by fear. And then you've got people who are regulated by logic. So that when something happens, either your amygdala kicks in fear or your hippocampus kicks in. It's very much a versus between the hippocampus and your amygdala. And either you're governed by your amygdala or you are governed by your hippocampus. And once you realize that you can use logic to stamp out fear, game over for fear. Now you're growing, but it requires education to get that point. And this is the core of all healing, because you can heal, you can understand, but if you don't know how to problem solve, you're not going to prevent the abuse from happening again. It's going to keep happening again and again. And it's the ability in the face of change, in the face of that moment, it's that ability to be able to step back and say, oh, I need to change. I'm going to have to problem solve this. There are 3 stages of anger. The first stage is reflective of the nonconformist, the foundational work, which is the aggression and the abuse. They feel anger, so they switch right over to abuse and aggression because they lack communication. The second stage of anger is communication. That's when you talk about it. But the third stage of anger is problem solving. It's when you say, okay, we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to take action. We're going to problem solve. And that doesn't happen until and unless your hippocampus is at a certain size, which doesn't happen unless and until you become educated. You have to grow your hippocampus. Now, that all being said, I have a map called the Map of the Foundations. I posted on my website last night where I wrote it all out. And it's breaking down, this is it. It's breaking down 7 stepping stones that takes a person from the first perspective to the 6th perspective. There is no healing prior to the 6th perspective because, and I love talking to my psychologist friend about this. The 6th perspective has a moment, it's that accountability. And she was talking about it one day. She goes, you know, it's amazing. She goes, I've had people where they've started therapy. That's 5th perspective. You start therapy at 5th perspective. And then they learn accountability and it changes. I said, yeah, that's the 6th perspective. When you internalize the lesson of the 5th perspective, you switch over to the 6th perspective and you're a different person. Now you're accountable. That's when healing starts. Healing does not begin until you are at the 6th perspective. It does not happen until you're at the 6th. That is when you realize, oh, I hurt other people. Oh, my actions affect other people. And that's when we become pacifists. But you've also begun the metaphysical transformation. So now metaphysical transformation, you have to do ABC. Now there's a lot of people who want healing prior to that point, but they've got 7 steps to get through and they're not ready. And if you don't go through the 7 steps, you're not going to get there. There are some people who want to heal, but they're not accountable. This is literally the pathway to accountability. So it's literally getting yourself through the first ethics. Getting yourself through those very first, it's really extraordinary. And once you get yourself through the first 3 ethics, where you're understanding how to use comfort and adventure to your advantage to learn, combined with, and that's it really, you are taking adventure and comfort, and you are using those hand in hand. And then in addition to comfort and adventure, the other side of that is you have your indulgence, avoidance, integration. And those things, that's it right there. You have your comfort and adventure, and you have to toggle those, and you have your indulgence, avoidant, integration. And those two pieces work together simultaneously. This is learning. This is learning 101. Now there's comfort, adventure, and then there's the trauma zone. And then you have the indulgence, the avoidance, and the integration. Now, trauma alters the indulgence, avoidant, integration learning process. It absolutely interferes with it. So when people have trauma, they indulge, they get frozen in avoidance. That's what it is they stop integrating and they get frozen in avoidance. Trauma freezes people in either avoidance or it freezes people in indulgence. If you are traumatized at the first ethic, it freezes you with addiction, or you get frozen in indulgence, which is your addictions, which is your comfort zone. And if you get frozen in your trauma, in your second perspective or third perspective, you get frozen in your avoidant. If it's second perspective, I can tell you exactly which avoidant you're going to be, what you're going to avoid. And if it's integration, then if you're in the third perspective, it's going to be something different. So it's going to be avoidant, but it's going to be the third perspective. The first perspective is indulgence. The second perspective is avoidance. And the third perspective is avoidance. And immediately, and what it is trauma literally paralyzes our learning, our learning triad. It's extraordinary to see it. So in order to unfreeze this, you have to go back to the comfort zone, indulge, and then move over to the adventure. But for first perspective, it's going to be different. They have an abundance of comfort and they want to leave. They're bored, but they don't know how to leave. And that's where they get stuck. They have the boredom. They're ready to switch over into the second perspective, but they won't. Whereas the second and third perspective are stuck in the trauma zone and they don't know how to get over to the comfort zone. They have no idea how to get over to comfort zone. And that's their problem. So either a person is stuck in the comfort zone because they won't go into the adventure zone, or they are stuck in the trauma zone and they can't get over to the comfort zone. And once you understand where you are in that spectrum and you can start to push yourself through it and navigate you through it, you're fine. But here's the kicker. Until you get through these first three perspectives, we can't help you. We cannot help you. You have to have these first three perspectives all on your own down. So that's where the map for the foundations comes in, to walk them through the 7 steps to get them through them. It's the 7th step of unsticking your trauma. I like that, unsticking your trauma. And once you unstick your trauma, you're able to learn again because you have the indulgence, the avoidance, and the integration back again, and it's moving flow. It's free flowing again. But that's going to kick you right off into the metaphysical transformation, which is, and like I said, healing is such a small fraction of this. Looking back, it's like, it's a blip. It's a blip. Healing is a blip. And suddenly it's like, wow, welcome to metaphysics. And now you've got the 6th, the 10th perspective. And then there's more after that. And it's literally going through the different perspectives and mapping out what we do with our human development from that point on and what this leads to. And it's an extraordinary journey. It really is. It really is. It's going to be shifting our priorities as far as how to put this into our society and how to change society. We need to shift our priorities. Bottom line, that is the goal. We have to shift our priorities. In order to shift our priorities, we have to realize that there's a problem. We have to be sick of the problem and we have to change it. And it's you have to have enough. You have to finally be sick enough. And I think we're there. I really do believe that we are finally at a point where we're going, okay, I am officially sick of the way the world is. Great. Here's how to fix it. And the problem and this is, I have a meeting today, actually, this afternoon with a sponsor for the garden. And he's looking for a plan. And I'm like, I've got a plan. And it's really sitting down and explaining, this is the problem with the world. This is what we're missing. This is the priority shift that we're lacking. And this is why. It's people want, but they don't know how. And I'm stepping in with the massive how. This is how we're going to do it. Because this is the psychology of human beings. This is the psychology of sociology. And this is the psychology of economy. Or this is it. This is what's wrong. And it's literally this is everything that's the problem right now. And this is how to start it. And this is literally the hierarchy of how to start shifting things. The problem is, and this is really it, is getting it in front of people to let them know this is what we're dealing with. It's literally this massive welcome to the internal expanse. And then that's really the problem, is no one knows about the internal expanse. No one has any clue about the internal expanse. Everyone's terrified of it. And you've got mental ill people who are lost in it. You've got schizophrenia people who are already in it, freaking out. You've got neurodivergents who are already in it and they have no idea what's going on. And you've got conformists who are telling everyone to run away and not look at it. And it's oh, you beautiful, brave new world. Thank you so much for your audience, and may the kindest of words always find you.